I'm Andy Temte, and welcome to the Saturday Morning Muse. Start your weekend with me by exploring topics that span leadership, business management, education, and other musings designed to support your journey of personal and professional continuous improvement. Today is October the 5th, 2024. Last week, I asked the question, do you believe in yourself and your team? This week, I want to talk about what's holding us back, what's preventing growth in self-confidence and our ability to believe in ourselves and our teams, especially in younger generations. So today, we're going to talk about self-doubt that's driven by stress and anxiety. Up front, I want to be clear that I'm not a medical doctor, and we're not going to be addressing any of the medical drivers and contributors to anxiety. Instead, we're going to be focused on what we can control, the external contributors to stress. Now, the American Psychological Association's 2023 Stress in America report shows clearly that young adults age 18 to 34 rate their stress levels much higher than individuals who are 65 and older. The younger generation reports that their stress is a 6 out of 10, whereas the older group's average is 3.4 out of 10. As a coincidental side note, my wife Linda and I finally got around to watching Inside Out 2 earlier this week when I was in the depths of a bout with COVID. You can still hear a little bit of it in my voice. If you haven't seen the movie or its predecessor, Inside Out, from back in 2015, I strongly recommend that you do so. Yes, they are incredibly cute Pixar films, but under the amazing animation is an instructive storyline that we can all learn from regarding our relationship with our emotions. As Riley, the main character in the films, reaches puberty, new emotions arrive on the scene, and the primary focal point of Inside Out 2 is, you guessed it, anxiety. Engaging with these films for both entertainment and as a tool to think more deeply about the relationship you have with your own emotions, I believe is time well spent. So, why does my opinion matter in this debate? I'm seeing these statistics that I quoted previously playing out firsthand in my role as lecturer at my undergraduate alma mater, the University of Wisconsin at La Crosse. One of the first things I ask my students, who are primarily graduating seniors, is to engage with my personal planning guidebook, which is a free download on my website. When class participants go through the A3 exercise that's outlined in the guidebook, in many cases, it represents the first time that they've ever asked themselves about things like their purpose in life. What's their current state? What's their desired future state? Do you have a vision for your future? Who are your mentors and coaches? What makes up your asset inventory? And what are your personal and environmental blockers? For many of the early 20-somethings in my class, stress and anxiety were highlighted as blockers to their ability to achieve their desired future state. They frequently find themselves spinning, and as some have characterized it directly to me, paralyzed by their anxiety at times. My heart breaks when I hear their stories, but I also know that we can do something about that current state of high anxiety. So, what are some potential causes and solutions to the generational gap in anxiety levels beyond the fact that Gen Z and millennials haven't had the benefit of hindsight and experience that baby boomers might have? Well, since this is such a complicated and important subject, we're going to explore it in a multi-part series, so tune in next week for more. But today, we're going to focus on money and finance, because this topic is A, a stressor that we do have control over, and B, financial security is typically listed as a top stressor for many people in our society. I also hold a PhD in finance, so I know just a little bit about the subject. Doing a little research, on the surface, it looks like the wealth gap between the generations is daunting, with an average wealth for 35 and under at about $180,000 US versus those who are 65 and older at about 1.8 million. However, given the 30-year gap between these groups, there's plenty of time for a 35-year-old starting with a $180,000 base to grow their wealth to a future value equivalent of $1.8 million. The real question is this: is the future value equivalent of $1.8 million enough to retire on, especially when the life expectancy of today's 35-year-old will almost assuredly exceed that of today's 65-year-old? The answer to this question is really complicated and depends a lot on your expectations of spending patterns in retirement, future rates of return, portfolio composition, your risk tolerance, and a whole number of other factors. The good news is that the S&P 500, one of the major market indices, has risen an average of 10.2% since its inception in 1957. So investing over long time horizons carries with it a high probability of healthy returns that will compound through the years. Notably, the lowest annual return over any 30-year time horizon for the stock market going all the way back to 1926 was 7.8%. So there are strong returns over long periods of time in the equity markets. So, what can younger generations do to alleviate worries about money and finance? Buy and hold the market and invest with consistency over time. Now, as another important side note, as baby boomers like me pass on to the great beyond over the next 20 or 30 years, we're going to see the biggest wealth transfer in history. So, we should all calm down just a little bit. But in the same breath, your parents' wealth should not be factored into your retirement plan. Your parents' portfolio is not yours, and they can make all sorts of decisions between now and then. This great wealth transfer also is not going to help traditionally underserved market participants a whole lot, so we need to do more. To build more financial equity across generations and cultural demographics, we should be investing heavily in financial acumen education in our schools. If you want to get ahead financially and reduce the stress and anxiety over money, understand money and investing. Without strong financial acumen in our population, the media will keep feeding into the anxiety of an undereducated population to drive clicks and traffic. Oh, and stop complaining that you don't have any money to invest in your teens and 20s. How do you do that? Cut back on that daily $5 latte that you're spending at the local coffee shop, or that premium bottled water that you just have to have because the bottle is really cool. Put that money into a fund that tracks the S&P 500. You'll be amazed how fast your portfolio will grow over the long term. $5 invested per day over 30 years at 10.2% is a cool $369,100. Now, you'll certainly need to invest more, but what's more important, the latte or a greater semblance of future financial security? This brings us to the key point of this episode, is that life and financial security is all about choices and decisions. Make better choices, and you will be better off. Next week, we're going to continue the conversation about our current epidemic of stress and anxiety, but I can't put enough focus on the value of education and good decision-making that's accompanied by a lifelong learning mindset as ways to reduce stress and anxiety. So we're going to see you next week. We'll talk about all sorts of other issues that we can control and some that we can't. But I really appreciate your attention today. My name is Andy Temte. This is the Saturday Morning Muse. You can find us on all the major streaming services. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public good with your friends. And this show was produced by Nicholas Temte.